Hello, everyone. It is so good to welcome you back to Blue in 22 Midterms Explained. I am Precious Green, the Director of Programming here at Manny's, and we are so excited. We have a New England state, and we are going to hear how things are a bit different up there, but still at the end of the day, the focus is the same. How can we support the Democratic Party and how we can keep the country blue? My guest today is Raymond Buckley, the chairman of the New Hampshire Democratic Party. Good afternoon, Chair Buckley. How are you?
Good afternoon, Precious, and everybody.
Excellent. Well, let's go ahead and just dive in. We're out here in California, so it's a bit different. And we hear of New Hampshire in particular every 4 years as we gear up for the presidential race, but we don't really know a lot about what's happening on the ground. So tell us a little bit about your state.
Sure. New Hampshire is a 2 congressional district state. It's sandwiched between Maine and Vermont, and we're just north of Massachusetts and just south of Quebec. So we're more of a tall state. We're stretched out a little. And it was a state that when I was growing up was a solid Republican state. And when Democrats won, it was an anomaly, and they surely didn't get reelected. It was just something happened that particular year, and they were one term and out. I served 18 years in the New Hampshire legislature, every single minute of that in the distinct minority, sometimes a 3-to-1 minority. Then 2 years after my leaving the House, we won the majority for the first time since 1870. And I was like, okay, my timing, perfect. But the last 15 years have been a remarkable transformation here in New Hampshire. On the presidential level, Bill Clinton carried it in '92, the first since 1964, and part of that was FDR in 1932. But we won in '96, lost by 7,000 votes because of Ralph Nader being on the ballot in 2000. But we've won it every time since. We've won Kerry and Obama, and Clinton and Biden. So on the presidential level, we're getting a little more solid. In the U.S. Senate, we've won 4 out of the last 5 U.S. Senate races. That said, in 2008, when I voted for Jeanne Shaheen and she won, that was the first time in my life that I'd actually voted for somebody who had won a U.S. Senate seat. The last time we won a Senate seat was 1974 when I was 14 years old. So that tells you how rapid this is changing here in New Hampshire and how rabid the Republicans are to stop that change. In the congressional races, we have won 11 out of the last 14 congressional races here in New Hampshire. And so we're really moving forward. In the governor's race, I'll tell you what kind of happened to us, but we had been on a streak. We have 2-year gubernatorial terms here, and we carried the state when Governor Sheen was elected in '96, and she served 3 terms. Then we had one blip of a 2-year term for a Republican elected in 2002. And then we had Democrats, both Governor Lynch, then Governor Hassan, back to back all the way to 2016. And we lost the governor's race by 2% in 2016. And what's so tragic about that is that if we had held on to the governor's race, New Hampshire would have already been transformed, because we would have held the majorities right through the last couple of elections and into the redistricting. And so they would not be able to gerrymander us into even more impossible districts, is what they're doing now. So we've won 4 out of the last 8 legislative majorities in the House. We've won 3 times in the Senate. And we have this odd thing left over from colonial times called the Executive Council that really runs the state alongside of the governor. And we've won the majority there for 3 times as well. So we are competitive at every level. And that's what makes every single race extremely important. Maggie Hassan won in 2016 by 1,017 votes. 1,017 votes. Now, she wasn't, our polling showed her winning bigger. What happened is, if you look to 2016, New Hampshire was the only true battleground state that didn't fall to Trump. We held on. Hillary ended up winning by around 4,000 votes, which of course Trump was obsessed with. You probably didn't hear about it out there, but he was obsessed that we somehow stole the election. And my response, of course, is like, if I had sold the election for the presidential, I would have done the governor's race too. Now, come on. And the reality is this is a close state, and Trump was able to get into through those Facebook ads and whatnot, and he found about 35,000 people that had never showed any interest in even thinking about voting before. We have same-day voter registration. They showed up, they voted, and while we picked up the Senate seat and picked up the congressional seat in the first district and held on to the second, and when we gained some seats in the legislature, but it wasn't the landslide that we had been hoping for and been working for. This is a midterm election. Midterm elections are difficult in battleground states because that's why they call us the swing states, because we swing from one pendulum to the other. 2010 was terrible for us. We had won in 06 and 08 majorities at both congressional seats and on and on. And the only thing that we were successful in 2010 was winning then Governor Lynch's reelection to a fourth two-year term by just a couple points, and it was scary. So we got really wiped out. Now, thankfully, the Obama-Biden campaign really invested a long term into some ground organizing, preparing for the 2012 general, and so they did it for the New Hampshire primary because just in case they got challenged in the primary, and so that foundation of that real in-depth grassroots organizing really built the foundation that so when in 2014 came, and it was a very difficult year for Democrats across, we actually had more Democrats turned out than any other state in New Hampshire because of that ground operation. And Senator Sheen was reelected, Governor Hassan was reelected, and we were able to survive.
Thank you so much. That was, oops, sorry about that. That was extremely thorough. So we're definitely going to come back to the organization that you all have in place, because that's been a critical part of all of, every state's strategy, but particularly battleground states. But I do want to go back, and start with those national elections, because while you touched on 2016 and, those voters out of nowhere, one of the great stories of 2020 was that Biden won the state by 7 points. So there is that momentum. What can we do, or what are you all doing to try and maintain that momentum, or have you already seen a dip in it?
Well, we've actually seen an increase of momentum, and I know there's a lot of studies and a lot of things going on. And I just say I can't talk to what's going on in other states, but here in New Hampshire, we've had multiple state rep special elections. We actually was the first legislative special election in the country since the Biden election that flipped from red to blue. And then we had our city elections. All 13 of our cities have the elections, their mayor and city council, school board. And I believe the number was, I think 268 Democrats were victorious and only 98 Republicans. So we just demolished them. And in the midst of all this critical race theory baloney, and they were really just going after our school board members in the cities. Not one Democrat on any school board in any one of the cities was defeated. Every single one of them was reelected. We now have more Democratic mayors than we've ever had in our history. So we did really, really well in the city elections. We worked really hard. We had a great team working there and really working with the candidates, making sure they got out there and did their door-to-door and follow up and raise the money they needed and get the mail out and all that sort. So we're feeling pretty upbeat. Ground operations can make a difference in a close election.
So what would you say are the issues that are driving the constituents in your direction? What's working and working well in New Hampshire?
Well, first and foremost, absolutely the issue of abortion. New Hampshire has been polled as the most pro-choice state in the country. Even the Republicans are pro-choice. And not only what was happening in Texas and what's happening at the US Supreme Court, but Governor Sununu signed the first first abortion ban in New Hampshire history, where they make it extraordinarily difficult to receive an abortion here. That is really ginned up our ground, our grassroots. And the other is the assault on education, that they are trying to defund public education here in the state and try to shift the money. They've already created this crazy program where they take public funds to send private schools, and it was originally supposed to be like $600,000, and now it's ballooned up to like 8 million. And so in a small state, that's a huge difference when you pass something for that amount and all of a sudden it's significantly larger. So they're really attacking the fundamentals of our community. Critical race theory is in New Hampshire anyways, is considered an attack on just basic understanding of what history and civics is, and the people get that. And so, it's those sort of just regular issues. It's not stuff that's going on in Washington. It's not stuff that's going on, anywhere else. It's what's really impacting the people's lives.
So, and that's another recurring theme that we've heard, that it's really, the issues on the ground and not the talking points from DC. You mentioned that the governor passed this anti-abortion bill, and I know he is up for re-election. Who's running against him from the Democratic Party, and how is that race looking? How's it shaping up?
Well, the interesting part of that is that every single Republican in the House, in the Senate, and on the Executive Council, and the governor, all voted for it. So it's a great unifier that there isn't a single Republican that can say that, oh, well, I wasn't with my party. They all marched in lockstep. And so our candidate for governor is a state senator, a two-term state senator, who happens to be wait for it, a doctor. So we've got Tom Sherman that filed his committee the other day, and he's getting up and going with that. It's going to be a phenomenal campaign. Chris Sununu, after signing that abortion ban, dropped 20 points in the polls. And so he's now hovering around 50% versus that crazy 70% that COVID gave all the incumbent governors. So we think that he is susceptible. If we'd had the resources in 2018, we could have knocked him out then, when we had State Senator Molly Kelly was running against him, and the polls the week before had them tied, but we didn't have any out-of-state financial support, and we just couldn't do it. And she ended up losing by, I think, 6 points.
Okay. And that leads me to the first. Tomas, if you can go ahead and drop the link in the chat. Everyone, you know how we do this. We want you to support our party in these battleground states. So we're going to be putting those links in the chat so you can donate and volunteer even from a distance. Let's go ahead and move into the Senate race. So Senator Maggie Hassan is up for re-election, and she's still popular in the state, but we know that every election is a tough election. What's the state of play for that race, and who and what is she up against?
Well, every Senate race is going to be a battle for a number of years until we're a solid blue state and join the rest of the Northeast. It's just taking a little longer than I was expecting. I was hoping it'd speed up a little, but it's coming. Senator Hassan, as I mentioned, was elected by 1,017, defeating incumbent Republican senator, the only one to defeat incumbent in a true battleground state in 2016. She is running a phenomenal campaign. We've already started our coordinated campaign. We have a 3-person voter protection operation already going on, which is a big deal here in New Hampshire. And for a while, for most of 2021, we thought that Governor Sununu was going to run, but he backed out and said he was going to run for a 4th 2-year term as governor. And so right now we have a retired military general who's not well liked within the Republican Party. He ran last time and Trump endorsed his opponent. he has a, he's a character. The other person is a former one-term state rep who went on to be the executive director of our right-wing think tank called Cornerstone that wanted a 100% ban on abortion, gay rights, blah, on and on and on, who ended up becoming a town manager. And then the third is the current Senate president, who has all of the personality of a DMV, intake worker. He has zero personality, and so there's nobody. But any of these three, while they're flawed, any of them could be elected in with the right attacks. The amount of money, if somebody comes in and spends, $40 million on TV, can absolutely, upend this race. So we're feeling confident, we're feeling good, but we need support, we need help. Got to build on the ground operation. We've got a pretty huge field operation already, and we're going to be expanding it throughout the spring.
Are you seeing a lot of outside dark money or PAC money coming into your state?
I believe the number was that there's already been 17 million spent in Little New Hampshire, and in the past 13 months. Because about 2/3 of New Hampshire is covered by Boston media, so the cost of it is pretty excessive. But we have one statewide television station, WMUR, which becomes quite famous every 4 years during the primary. And then you've got spots, where some is a little Maine, some is a little Vermont or whatnot. So, but television certainly has an impact. Not every area of certainly the remote areas of the state, they don't have high-speed internet, so there's not as much of the connection on the internet as probably other places. But we think, well, it's going to be expensive. They're going to target her. We're feeling upbeat, but we need to make sure the entire ticket is strong. We need to make sure that Tom Sherman's gubernatorial, because it will go governor, U.S. Senate, Congress, then the rest of the ticket. So the stronger that Tom Sherman is against Sununu, the stronger it'll help Maggie.
So looking at the full ticket, obviously you mentioned that New Hampshire has 2 congressional seats, but maps are still a key part of this, and you kind of addressed it a little bit. My understanding is that the maps are still not finalized. What is the state of that, and how do you plan your congressional races when your map is ephemeral?
Yeah, well, New Hampshire's congressional districts are essentially the same, just cut New Hampshire right in half, right up the middle of the state, since I think around 1832. And while there was a lot of trash talking by the Republican state chair, I'll admit I didn't take it seriously, because there's always been some sort of bounds that people in New Hampshire recognize. And as a true example of how deep Trumpism has gotten infected the Republican Party, the proposal that the New Hampshire House proposed and passed to the Senate, and the Senate now has the map, it creates a Republican monster district where it takes all the Democrats out of both districts and then makes this other side district where just the Republicans are, so that they can steal one of the seats. Now, I think, interesting is the one where, our openly gay member of Congress is representing. Our other district is Annie Custer, who has done a terrific job too. But they are trying to steal the seat. It's going to take an effort. I think he can do it. Chris is, in his second term. His family, his great-grandfather started a restaurant in Manchester, the largest city, 10% of the state, and which is the most popular restaurant by volume in the state. So he's very well known, and they're a very family-friendly restaurant and widely liked. And he was able to be elected to the executive council in a district that's actually worse than this bad district that they created. So there's hope. I'm not ready to give up, but he is going to need a lot of resources as our entire ticket will.
And really quickly, before I forget, when are the primaries?
Our primary is in September. We're the second Tuesday of September every 2 years. That looks like it's going to be changing. The Senate passed a bill just last week, moving it to June, which had always been a priority for us for many years. And never, our Secretary of State was always vehemently opposed. And you may have heard he unexpectedly resigned a couple of months ago, which is what really makes it scary, because our Secretary of State's not elected on the ballot. The House and Senate come together in a joint session and they elect the Secretary of State. And if the Republicans pick up a good sized majority in the House and Senate this November, then they're going to be able to elect a Trumper as Secretary of State. And what that does is it impacts not only how we conduct our elections. The Secretary of State has huge powers in New Hampshire, but also how the Electoral College votes are counted. So we are very anxious about making sure that we either we get the majority, which we're very close, and it's a narrow minority in both places, or at least get close enough that they can't possibly elect a Trumper.
Wow. Okay. The sense that I have is that for decades, generations, New Hampshire was a fairly collegial state. Right. The parties worked together, and in the span of just a few years, that collegiality has just been ripped, and people are still trying to understand how on earth did this happen. Wow. So while we've already pivoted to the state legislature, I'd like to go a little bit deeper. The chambers are currently both in the other party's hands. What do you see are the chances, like how many seats would you all need to take the chambers? And do you feel that there are that many flippable seats?
Yes. We lost the majority in the New Hampshire House by a collective 500 votes. We in my city, we lost one of the legislative races by 1 vote. And it was all out there. And we have a 400-member legislature, a 400-member House, and so it's really hard to gerrymander. They tried their best, but we feel pretty good that we can win the majority with getting the good candidates, get them out there knocking on the doors and doing the relationship building that they have to do. So feeling very good about that. The Senate, I thought that what they threw on us after 2010 was the worst possible districts for the Senate, and well, they upped themselves, and the districts are just beyond even comprehensible. I can't believe they've done it, but we still think that we can win the majority. They wrote both the House and Senate districts 10 years ago so that we could never win the majority again, and we won the majority half the time in the House, and we won it at least once in the state Senate. So we were still able to beat back with the redistricting. So we'll continue to keep doing that. But we've got to do it this time. And thankfully, there's enough Republican state senators leaving that there's some vacancies that we can pick up in districts that are Republican leaning, but they're not leaning so far that they're not winnable.
Okay, I'm fascinated by the fact that one of the smallest states in the union has 400 members in its House. Okay, moving on from that.
I once did the math. I think it's like you would have 32,000 House members or something. I think it was 32,000 in California if you do the same calculation.
Yes, we don't wish that on us. So with this very long primary runway, how is the recruiting going? Are you finding strong candidates for this multitude of races? Are you having to sort of navigate multiple people running for those, or have you been able to really kind of get everyone in lockstep?
One of the interesting districts. So New Hampshire has a history of involvement, and so sometimes people have had other positions and they run on and on. So we've had this state senator that was a two-term member of Congress, and he's been reelected to this district that is a Republican-leaning district, but not an overwhelming Republican. And we've never been able to defeat him. We've, tried, but we never really got our act together. Well, because the Senate president, and he's currently the majority leader, the Senate president's running for U.S. Senate. He's the likely, if the Republicans retain majority, Senate president. Well, guess who we have running against him? I am could not be more excited. We have a Republican state legislator who was elected, who switched parties this last spring because he's a doctor, and he was so upset that he was being ordered to pass on COVID propaganda, and he wasn't able to do things in the legislature that he knew was correct. So he's running, and he says he's going to self-fund. So I don't even have to raise any money for him. So, so that's an exciting thing. It's a district that's in the northern mountain part. A lot of resorts in there, higher end, but a lot of higher end retirees on our side as well. So I think he's got a good shot. I'm terribly excited. What's so exciting is that Republican is kind of a jerk, and he'll never see it coming. Because he's so arrogant. His real name is Joseph E. Bradley III. We call him a trust fund baby. He truly is. So he's not a particularly, in my opinion, pleasant person. When he ran for Congress, he ran a really ugly campaign against his female opponent. It was just disgusting. So getting him back is just, when he thinks he's going to be Senate president, and next thing you know, he's on retirement village. Sounds pretty good.
I have to say, I love your enthusiasm. It's really coming through. So, and that's great because, I think so much coverage has been so heavy. If you pay attention to CNN or Politico or any of those, they're like, the Democrats. But hearing what's happening in New Hampshire, there are points of light. There's a lot of light coming through. So we really appreciate that. Looking broadly, tell us a bit about how are you all doing in terms of voter registration? It sounds like it is incredibly crucial there when seats are being lost by 400 votes. How is that going? And are you all having to deal with any sort of voter suppression efforts?
Two great questions. The exciting one is the voter registration. We now have more registered Democrats in New Hampshire than registered Republicans. And we've had it now for 2.5 years, which is the longest stretch. We've had it every once in a while we would jump up, then we would 2 months later, we'd fall back down because we were only ahead by 40 or 50 or whatever. So we're very excited that we've now lasted, and the independents, which were 43%, are now down to 37%. So people are joining the party, and so that's exciting. We're going to make a significant investment in voter registration, certainly in the communities that have communities of color, and really do a reach out. We're specifically going to make sure we have staff on board that can go door to door that Spanish speaking, and we think that in a close race, that once again they can, folks can make the difference. So we think that's important, and so that's the good news. The bad news is that New Hampshire really has been ground zero for voter suppression stuff. Anyone who has ever, people should Google phone jamming and you'll see New Hampshire. And the Republicans have done everything they could to steal elections here. And we've fought back successfully. We've taken them to court multiple times, but in the phone jamming instance, we ended up sending their executive director and their consultant to prison. And also got $125,000 from the Republican State Party. But it really started after '96. I was the ranking Democrat in the New Hampshire House in the election law committee. And right after 1996, when Jean was elected, and remember, we hadn't even won a statewide race since 1980, so it had been 16 years before people even took us seriously. Suddenly, Jean, a woman, gets elected governor. Oh my! Well, they convinced themselves that we somehow stole it, and it was just a complete. We had busloads of Massachusetts voters coming up, according to them, and I was like, what color was the bus? What was the name of the bus? Of course, they couldn't answer anything. Did you take a picture of the bus? Did you what are those people when they went in to register? Where did they register to vote at? What was that? But the lie consisted so much that Trump was repeating it after 2016. And Sununu was on national media saying, yeah, we have a real problem. So it is just embarrassing with what they've done. But we now have the voter ID, and they have tried to every year, not every 2 years, but every year they try to in a different way to make sure that the students at the colleges can't vote, because that really has made a difference in our statewide races. We have Dartmouth College, University of New Hampshire, Plymouth State University, and Keene State, and all added together, that's about 10,000 voters. And in a close race, as you can tell, it'll make the difference. So, as I mentioned, we have a 3-person voter protection team already. We're working very diligently. We're making sure that we have lawyers in every one of the polling places watching exactly what happened. I was proud to say that in 2016, there was not a single incident in any polling location in New Hampshire, which was the first time in years. So we're feeling, I said 2016, 2020, I meant to say. And so we're pretty confident we're going to be able to make sure that nothing bad happens. Sununu appointed, his governor's counselor, or the lawyer in his governor's office, as the attorney general. So we're not really excited about being able to work with him, but we've got a great team, and I'm feeling really good about that.
Excellent. Thank you so much for giving us just such an extensive introduction to New Hampshire and an overview of everything that's going on. I have to admit, there's a lot going on in New Hampshire. And so I'm so glad we were able to have this conversation. I'll give you the close. Everyone here and everyone who will be listening down the road wants to be involved. So let us know how those of us out here in California and around the country can support you and the New Hampshire Democrats.
Absolutely. I know you hear this all the time, but it is really financial resources so that we can hire the staff to help organize each of the communities. As I mentioned earlier, 2014, a tough year for Democrats across the country. And we were the only state that had increased in Democratic turnout from 2010. And we did that by building that sort of infrastructure in those communities and really supporting our grassroots. We need to open up offices. We need to hire local organizers. We need to make sure that they've got the support. And when we say they, that's in our entire ticket, because everything is on the ballot, and everything can make a difference. Whether you're running for the New Hampshire House, or you're running for U.S. Senate, you're running for Congress or governor, state senate, whatever you're running for, it will have an impact nationally. Maggie Hassan may still be the person that determines whether we have the majority in the U.S. Senate. Chris Pappas and Annie Custer may decide if we have the majority in the U.S. House. Just imagine, what will happen if we lose those majorities. And we've got to make sure that we knock out Chris Sununu as governor, and because we want to make sure that we have a fair election here in 2024, and Donald Trump is not president again. So anything that you can do financially, we can. Our laws are open in the sense that we can work with you, work with individual donors about what kind of dollar we can receive: federal dollars, non-federal dollars, and while it's tight. It's certainly workable for anyone that really wants to make a big difference here. And when I say a big difference, $100 could make a big difference. Of course, 10,000 would make even more, but but we will, if enough people give us $100, we don't need a $10,000 donor.
Well, Chairman Buckley, oh, the sound. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I know our community really appreciates you taking the time. Everyone, as always, make sure you get the links that are in the chat. You can find out about the gubernatorial candidate, Tom Sherman. You can find out how you can volunteer with the New Hampshire Democrats. And of course, you can find out how you can support Maggie Hassan and the party with your donations. We will be sending out the notes from this conversation. Make sure you're back here again on Tuesday for the last of our midterm explainers, which will be with Rusty Hicks, the chairman of the California Democratic Party. We are a blue state, but we have some really funky little parts. So we are really excited about that conversation. Again, Chairman Buckley, thank you so much for your time. Everyone, have a wonderful Thursday. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.